Welcome to the Providers Report, where we delve into the world of value-based healthcare. Our mission is to empower healthcare providers with the knowledge and tools they need to deliver exceptional patient care. Each episode, we explore best practices, innovative strategies, and real-world examples of how to achieve the highest standards in patient communication and outcomes. Join us as we transform the future of healthcare, one conversation at a time.
Hey guys, welcome to Better Doctor Project, where we interview healthcare providers to tap into their experiences so we can turn our challenges into our biggest strengths. We hope today's episode inspires you to take that next step to become who you want to be in practice. I'm Dr. Beck.
And I'm Dr. Mack.
Let's get started. Hey guys, it's Dr. Beck. Today on BDP, we're going to be chatting about depression in adolescents. It's important to realize both the similarities and differences this population has compared to other patient subtypes. Some things make them much easier to work with, but of course, there are some things that make them even more challenging for us as healthcare providers. How can we be an advocate for them when we suspect that there might be an issue with depression? Do we have the tools we need to conquer this right on the spot when it shows up in our office? It's time to get your brain churning with Tim Vaughn today, a cognitive behavioral therapist and mental health counselor who works frequently with this age group and is very passionate about seeing them thrive and overcome their battles. Let's get started. Hello, everybody at Better Doctor Project. We are here with Tim Vaughn today, and we're going to be talking about depression, anxiety, all of those things that we deal with the adolescent population. We're going to talk about what you can look for with your patients, how we can directly help them starting in practice ASAP, and just the best ways to go about such a delicate topic. So, Tim, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I just want to start off really basic. And can you just give us the rundown on how common you think this is in the adolescent population and what signs and symptoms we should really be looking for with this group?
I think it's becoming more and more common. What do we need to look for? Well, I think we need to look for when we have a child or an adolescent that's extroverted, that becomes isolated, drop in grades, things that they used to enjoy that they're no longer participating in, and things like that would signify withdrawal.
Absolutely. And you say it's becoming more common, which I think kind of culture and society in general, depression and anxiety, I think in all populations is becoming more common. Do you think there's anything specific that's led to this happening more with the adolescent population?
Yes, I have some kind of unique perspectives, I guess, on it. One of the things that we look at is the increase in the work week. Okay, so previously work weeks looked like, in theory, 40 hours maybe. We see an increase in adults working more, right? Mm-hmm. For me, in my practice, what I see is a lot of kids that are putting more and more time into so many different things, so many extracurricular activities, AP classes, and that's fine, but they're so overwhelmed. Some of them are staying up until 11, 12 o'clock at night. They have to get up at 6 a.m. And of course, an adolescent needs more sleep actually than what adults do. I think it's anywhere between 9 to 10 is what they say. So we have teenagers that are in deprived states, and they get a lot of mixed messages. They get a lot of messages that they have to push. They have to push harder and harder and harder to I don't know, dare I say, keep up with the Joneses kind of a philosophy. So that's what I see a lot in my private practice with anxiety and depression, is more kids that are actually overachieving, but just have very little time to enjoy, have fun, relax, and
the things that we did in the 90s, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just playing with the neighborhood kids on your bike, all that stuff. I have a lot of patients who are teachers too, and I talk to them, and I really hear some echoes of their day and some of their concerns that there are a lot of classes that are being, or like recess opportunities, right? Time for kids to just express themselves and be and figure out who they are, that sometimes are replaced with test prep and things like that. Do you see that happening, and what's the effect of that for patients in your practice?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. So what do they say is the biggest indicator of success on a job or someplace? Interpersonal skills, at least is what I've read, but what do they do, right? Times when we have that recess, that's the first thing cut, right? For things that you're talking about, such as test prep, which unfortunately many of the teachers, they're kind of pigeonholed into doing this, but it's not necessarily always what they're believing in as well. So yeah.
And honestly, I've been talking about this a lot with my patients too. One of the few good things that have come out of 2020, I feel like we've kind of been able to revert back a little bit and actually care about some of those fun things that were normal in the 90s, like going for a walk, going for a bike ride, just having an evening where family just hangs out and relaxes. I mean, I have so many kids who are just hanging out with their parents because they couldn't leave at one point and do something else. There were no sports for a while. And so I really try to kind of spin the conversation and make it more positive. Like, hey, that's great. The fact that you have an evening to just sit there and do nothing, that's awesome. And I feel like it almost had a negative connotation the last 1 or 2 decades because we're always supposed to be go, 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 go. And trust me, I love to be go, 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 go all of the time. But at the end of the day, I think our minds, our bodies, everything, every part of us just needs that time.
Yes, I agree completely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously every field is going to be different, whether you're in chiropractic, cardiology, primary care. But just as a general formality, when we're maybe suspecting something in a kiddo, or a big kiddo, I guess you could say too, when we see something and suspect something, what is a really good way for us to address it to the actual child? With a parent, it's, I don't want to say easier, but I feel like you kind of already know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking to a child, you don't want to just jump right out and say it. Hey, I think you're battling some depression and anxiety currently. Do you want to talk about that? Are there ways we can phrase it to be different? Are there forms or certain words we should be using that are well accepted by children? What do you think?
Yeah, when you say children, how do you mean?
I guess we can talk about it from both ends. So obviously at a certain level, they start to develop higher cognitive skills and abilities. I guess let's talk about the lower end of that first. So maybe under the age of 10 to 12, that's obviously going to be harder. What are ways where we can actually ask them how they're doing without appearing overbearing or too medical or doctory in that time?
Right. Who do you play with? What do you guys do when you do play? What are some of the things you do for fun? So to get into that, and then if we're seeing that they're not doing those things, and that's usually an indicator, and that's how you can start the conversation. Because, like you said, they're not gonna say, "Are you depressed?" And they're gonna realize what that may look like, right? But you can also talk about the behavior. Is there sometimes you just feel like crying sometimes, or it's kind of, they do understand, usually sad.
Yeah, those are great points. How about for the delicate age where they're more cognitively aware, but it's that fine line between they probably don't want your help, they don't want you to poke and prod. So maybe that 14 to 18 or 14 to 17-year-old mindset.
Sure. Well, in my field, I think in any field really, it's most important that you have some kind of rapport. Now, if you have time to do that, like I do as a therapist, and they're going to come to you for an hour or something, it's a little more easy to do that. But I think starting out, taking just a few minutes to get to know them, what they're into, what they like, because really nobody cares what you know until they know you care. And I don't know if you heard that, but I really do. Yeah. So
guess who else loves that quote?
Who does?
Guess who else loves that quote?
Who?
Dr. Sean Neff.
Dr. Sean Neff does? Okay.
He does.
I didn't invent that quote. So.
It's
But,
a great
This was your
one.
moment.
Yeah.
You could have taken credit for it right here, right now, and be all over the
true.
air.
It's
Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, he stole it from you. So
that's right. He probably did. He probably did. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So do you, I'm curious, do you usually have the parent in with you during a session, or does that change dependent on your patient when they're underage, obviously?
I absolutely have the parent in there because as you said, Dr. Beck, that's when they come in, they don't want to be there. Usually they don't want to hear what you have to say. And sometimes they're not the greatest historians starting out. And sometimes parents can help with that. So yes, absolutely. I think you have the parents in.
Are there times when you find that the parents are the ones giving the entire history or jumping maybe to answer those questions before the child does? I know I see all kinds of parenting, obviously, in my office. I work with all different ages. And there are those who like to step in and speak for their child. And sometimes they do that voluntarily before the child even has a chance. Sometimes they do that if the child's not speaking up. So I'm curious to see how you handle that and what parts of that you find affect your ability to really assess your patient thoroughly.
Right. I always give the child the chance to speak first. That's how I do it. But it depends on where they are. Sometimes they'll defer to their parents, and then the parents will talk, and then I'll look to them at the end and say, is that right? Is there anything that mom or dad got maybe wrong there? And they can fill in the blanks like that. But I think what you're talking about are you talking about when they dominate the conversation or?
Yes. Yeah. I was talking about both. So now that you've covered that one perfectly, what would you do in a situation where maybe the parent's a little bit overbearing?
The parent's a little bit overbearing. What I will do is I will allow the parent to speak because I think they would like to have their time. And then after that, usually I will say, I'd like to get to know your son or daughter right now and have some time to speak with them as well. So I will politely figure out how to get them out of the room after I've allowed them to speak.
Perfect. At what point when you are concerned about a patient, you've had these discussions with them, you realize they might be experiencing some depression or anxiety, at what point do you involve the parents in this conversation? I know they're there. Mm-hmm. At what point do you turn to them to have them play any part of a role?
I always tell the parents, I like them to play a role from the very get-go. Because in my field, what I tell all parents is I'd rather have them talking to you than me, because I'm going to be gone eventually. And sometimes the reason for their depression is because the parents and the child are miscommunicating, especially at that adolescent level, So I set the groundwork that I want the parents involved. And it's difficult because you want the adolescent to trust you confidentially. But then there's times when what I will say is, I think this is important for mom or dad to know, and I think they're on our home team here, if they really are, if they're and I'll say, let's work together to figure out how we can tell them about this. Okay, would you like for me to talk or you? And a lot of times I'll say you to talk, and then what I'll do is I'll say, what can I tell them? What can't I tell them? Unless they're really talking of harming themselves or something like that. But if it's just, I suspect they're depressed or anxious about some situations. I'll kind of dialogue this. This is what I'm going to say to them. Are you okay with that? Yes, this is okay. And then I'll have the parents come back in and tell them what I think is needed to be said. And then at the end, I'll ask the kid again, how did I do? Okay, because for me, the important thing is always keeping that connection, that rapport.
Yeah,
I love that, and I love how you prime that effective communication now for their whole family. It's kind of just like for us, we deal in low back pain a lot, for example. And I love seeing my patients. We see them frequently, usually at the beginning, and then as things hold, it's okay, great, see you next time you need me, right? But what I love is when I can teach a patient how to either assess or manage their back pain at home initially, right? And help them, give them those tools. Like, I love seeing you, Mr. Smith, but if I don't see you, that means you're feeling great, right? So I love that, because that's essentially exactly what you're doing. You're giving the parent and the child home exercises and communication kind of
Mm-hmm.
to prime that pathway for the future. And that's just too cool.
Sure. Yeah, I tell everyone, we're with ourselves at all times, so we better be the best self-counselors for ourselves that we can be.
Yeah, I love that. So another thing that I'm really curious about, obviously the adolescent population, they're tough sometimes. But I want to know what we as healthcare providers can do if this is not our specialty, like what resources we can offer on the spot or just mention to patients when they're in our office. For example, if I'm chatting with a 17-year-old kid, he's just dropping in after football practice and starts talking to me, and the topic comes up a little bit. Maybe he's not an extreme case, but he's not really quite sure what to do. I would just love to be able to say, hey, check out this resource, or hey, look this up online, or hey, read that book. I would love to just have some tangible resources that I can just readily provide those patients. Do you know of any good ones right now?
Yes, a couple of good ones. My credentialing is as a cognitive behavioral therapist. One good book, I think, that an older adolescent would be, like you're talking about, a 17-year-old, is something called Think Good, Feel Good. Yes, that would be a good one. I think knowing your resources, knowing the people around you that you trust, and having some kind of a working, connection with other therapist providers that you say, hey, this would be somebody that might click well with this child, if you can sell them on the idea of going to counseling.
Right. So what types of specialties should we have on our referral list in the mental health world? So a psychiatrist, I'm assuming, an actual counselor. What's like the spectrum and all the different specialties that we should have a go-to person for?
Yeah, I think those two are the big ones for as far as mental health.
Okay.
Yes, but again, I think it's up to the therapist or whomever. It can be a general practitioner, whatever, to know maybe some of the changes that the child can make. Again, is he overwhelmed? Is he putting too much pressure on himself? What kind of things are they into? Are they passionate about? Those kind of things. Yeah.
Do we have to look for somebody with additional training with pediatrics, or is it not really necessary?
It was helpful for me because I was trained by somebody that works with children and adolescents as a therapist. I don't think it's necessary but it's helpful. Again, I think the most important thing is if you can get into their world and get them to buy into what you're working with them on, and get them again to believe that you're concerned about them as a person. That goes a tremendous distance with a child, and especially an adolescent.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we're starting to make those referral networks, let's say I'm in a new town and I'm looking for the right type of person to refer to, whether it's a psychiatrist, whether it's a counselor, or any kind of therapist in the mental health world, what are some good ways to reach out to those practitioners like yourself? What are some ways you would want a provider to reach out to you and say, hey, do you want to, let's meet up so that I'm interested in referring patients to you. I'd like to know what your style is, who you are, et cetera. Would you just want to meet up? Would you prefer someone send a letter? How would you suggest that we reach out?
I would always welcome meeting somebody one-to-one. I think that's completely appropriate. I wouldn't like the informal, let me send a letter. That would be me. That would be how I would like to do it. I think that's an indication that somebody's personable.
Absolutely.
Which I would think you would want in a mental health professional.
Yeah.
Just
someone who will
out there.
Someone who will sit and listen and talk to you and reciprocate, and you can really feel comfortable with. And I think that's very important. So
yeah, I really hope that's the norm in that field.
I don't know what others do, but I know that I have absolutely met with. I actually go in to the offices, introduce myself.
Awesome.
Yes, yeah. And usually doctors are very receptive to that and really appreciate that.
Yeah. So for example, I also take care of a lot of parents who are talking to me about their stresses and their condition, but maybe they're talking about being stressed about their son or daughter's anxiety and depression. So let's just say maybe that child isn't my patient, but the mother or father is. Let's say they're coming to me and they're like, I just don't know what to do anymore. I just feel lost. Are there any specific tips that you tend to give parents to get their children to open up a little bit more, things that have worked from the home level?
Yes. A couple that I can think of is the brain doesn't have the ability to grow when it's being shamed. Not that parents are shaming their child, but sometimes parents want the best for their kids. Of course, we all do. But it can be really difficult for parents to not put their spin on it, not put their ideas into it. And many times adolescents don't want to hear that. And they're trying to find their own way. And what happens is parents then become policemen and women instead of nurturing parents. So there's a balancing act. And I think one of the things that I tell them to do is take your kid, put them in the car, leave your phone at home, and go for a drive, because they can't go anywhere. They can't go to the room. And it's amazing the type of magic, parenting magic that can happen when your child's in the car long enough with you. And I encourage them to just do that several times. Take them to the, whatever it might be.
I love that you just said that, because my parents did that with me.
Did you value it at the time?
No, I felt like I was trapped in a jail cell, but it was so funny because, obviously, like most girls, age 12 to 14 is just a really rough time. And even though they're my best friends, I know I was probably not the most pleasant person to be around and during those years. But the car trick worked on me every time. And I would even laugh with them after the car ride. I would literally laugh to their face, like, you knew this was going to work. You knew you could trick me. It didn't matter how mad I was. That car ride just broke me down. I don't know. I felt like we were in a cool environment, a chilled environment with no distractions. And I haven't thought about that in 15 years until right this moment. But you're right. It's extremely effective.
Yeah. The magic
very
car
good
ride.
Reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very, very good.
I used to just travel like 17 hours back and forth to New York, from New York to Florida with my grandparents. So like, to me, it was just normal.
Okay.
Well, that's a long amount of time.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, it's also really funny that last quote that you brought up about how shame can just basically kill somebody's light. I'm really glad you brought that up, because there's this really famous TED Talk, and I don't have the name right now, but I will definitely link it in the show notes for our listeners, and I'll send it to you directly, Tim. There's this really cool TED Talk where a teacher who primarily teaches an underserved minority population, I can't remember in what city, she actually changed her whole career mindset, because one time in class, she went to provide discipline to a student. And the second the words came out of her mouth to the one student in front of all the other kids, she realized in that moment that she indirectly and by accident shamed her and possibly killed a light and killed some confidence in that student. And like the second those words left her lips, and I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was just enough. And she immediately thought, oh no, I know I needed to discipline in that moment, but did I just ruin something? Like, did I just literally kill that shining bright light in that individual? And immediately afterwards, she just completely revamped her mindset for teaching. She completely changed the way that she disciplined, the way that she taught. And the TED Talk really dives into it a little deeper, but it's so true. We have to find this healthy mixture of discipline as a parent, but also that nurturing, loving, caring mindset. And then you're going to end up with those really good outcomes.
Right. And we can reframe discipline, people think of discipline, they think of punishment and anger. And if we can get discipline to just mean the natural consequences fall, or as natural as they can be, it can be more of a teachable thing than a shame thing. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember the actual neuro brain science on it, but the brain does not have the ability actually to grow when it believes it's being shamed. So
it's an incredible concept.
It follows through to any patient too. Like, I feel like, parenting and being a healthcare provider kind of go hand in hand. Like, it's more like guidance, right? Is how we hope it to come across. And I think there are times where we have to read with our patients, like, hey, no, you have to do this, or these are going to be the consequences for your body, for your health, for your life. And then there are other times where we have to sit back and be like, you know what? Yeah, we had that slip up and slip up. You know what I mean? Like, It's exactly the same thing. And I just think it mirrors really beautifully what we do every day. Pretty cool, whether you're a parent or not.
You're right.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us tonight about this topic. I think already in just this short amount of time, there are definitely things we've discussed today that we can take and directly apply to our patients, both with the parents that we take care of and also those adolescents. So thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to having you on the show again.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, take care. Hey guys, it's me again. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. I think it's so important to get our minds thinking about things that might just be less commonly on our radar. Maybe you don't work with pediatric population or adolescent population quite as often, but what happens when you do? Are we comfortable enough that we can tackle what's being thrown at us that day? This episode should get you just that much closer to that level. Again, it's all about being better than we were yesterday, right? We only have a few episodes left, by the way, to wrap up season 1 of Better Doctor Project before the upcoming holidays. We'll have tons of great content coming your way throughout the next few months, so don't worry. Don't forget to check out the show notes from today's episode on betterdoctorproject.com. That TED Talk we talked about on today's episode regarding confidence and that shining light that can be found inside of a person is extremely powerful, and I encourage you all to take a listen. We will have that linked as well as a ton of other things on our show notes, so please check it out. Thanks, guys, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
We loved connecting with you today on this episode of the Better Doctor Project. We can't wait to share our next podcast with you in just 2 weeks. Same time, same place. Until then, pop over to Instagram to follow us at Better Doctor Project or keep up with us at betterdoctorproject.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Provider's Report. We hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring. To stay updated with our latest episodes, subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to listen. For more resources and continuing education opportunities, visit our website. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our patients and truly set a standard for value-based healthcare.